All right, friends. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aiden, and I am an educator here at the Natural History Museum of Utah. I'm going to be conducting our interview here with Research Quest because I love science so much, and I am so excited to be bringing some distance learning to all of our friends and scientists out there in the whole wide world. We have a lot going on. This week, we've been learning about the Cleveland Dinosaur Quarry. In fact, we started off with our exploration of the Dino Lab led by one of my fellow educators, Andy Connolly. And today we're going to have a special guest. And if you have a question, please feel free to press ask a question or to leave a comment. We would love to respond to them. Please don't be shy. Today, we are speaking with my new friend Jesse Pruitt, who is who is part of the Idaho Visualization Laboratory with the Idaho State University and the Idaho Museum of Natural History. It's a lot to say. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm super well. We started off, frankly, I'm not going to lie, we started off Monday great because we started off Monday with an exploration of our Dino Design Lab in Research Quest. So we got to play around with a lot of 3D models and such and build dinosaurs from them. And I understand that you had a specific role in Research Quest. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my job, I specialize in 3D scanning of museum collections. So I was able to 3D scan all of the fossil material that all of you guys have been working with in the Research Quest. So yeah, I use laser scanners to make 3D models of dinosaurs and sharks and whales and anything else I can get my hands on.
That's absolutely fascinating. I already have so many questions. Like, for example, what was your favorite fossil? I will say this. So far, we have not explored deeper into Research Quest yet. So without spoiling anything or giving anything away, was there like a specific kind of fossil that you really liked, like legs or teeth, something like that?
Well, the teeth are always cool, right?
Yeah.
Allosaurus has got some pretty nice teeth going on there, and there's some pretty fun stuff. But yeah, I mean it's all fun, but yeah, I mean if you're gonna be scanning dinosaurs, you got to scan the skulls and the teeth and the claws and things like that. That's what really makes for interesting 3D models.
How does scanning a fossil work?
It's a little complicated. There's a lot of math involved, and I don't really like math, but I mean the basic takeaways: you've got an articulated arm laser scanner, and it fires a laser at a 3D object, and then there's a camera that's built onto the scanner, and it's got an angle to it, and there's some trigonometry involved there to where the camera and the laser have a set distance to it, and then the camera picks up deformation of that laser across the surface, and it uses fancy mathematics to determine where that deformation happens in space. So basically, if you look at it from the side, you know, if you're scanning a curved surface, it'll look at the way that laser hits that surface, and it will assign X, Y, Z coordinates to every little point on that laser line, and then from there it'll build a 3D model.
I
It's a
think a
little
lot.
like magic, but it's science.
It sounds a lot like magic, but you know what it also kind of reminds me of? I'm sure some of our middle schoolers and high schoolers, and probably some of our elementary school viewers might be familiar with like echolocation, so like bouncing off of something, and so the lasers are kind of helping determine the patterns and textures and things,
Yeah,
right?
there's a bit of that too. For that sort of thing, you'd be looking at things like LiDAR scanners, which are used for scanning mountains and cars and things. And they use a technology that's called time of flight, and it's exactly that. So those, they fire a laser in a helical pattern, and as the laser goes out, it hits and then it comes back, and the software calculates that return. So that's exactly like echolocation. It's exactly a time of flight on that laser coming back to you that's reflected. So it is a bit magical.
It is, you know, math and science are like magic broken down, right? Like they're how we can do magic.
Right.
Yeah, I have a bunch of other questions for you. Like, what is the biggest thing you've ever scanned and printed? Is that how they're, or at least scanned?
So far, the biggest thing I've scanned is a blue whale. We did that last summer. We scanned an entire 76-foot blue whale skeleton. I haven't printed it yet, not not at full size.
Do you, when you scan, do you scan like an entire whale all at once, or do you do it in pieces?
We do it in pieces. So what I like to do is take the animal and lay it out anatomically. So I start with the skull, and then I do its cervical vertebrae, and then thoracic vertebrae and lumbar vertebrae until I get all of that laid out. And then I go to the other side. So I'll pick a side, depending on which is more complete, because it's a natural history item, and often it's not a perfect specimen. So I'll look at the ribs and see which of the ribs are more complete, left or right, and then I'll get those laid out, and then I'll lay out the arm and leg bones, except in the case of the blue whale, it doesn't have leg bones, but it does have a pelvis. So we get those laid out, and then we just break it down. We scan each bone individually, and then we bring that into the software. We'll 3D model that, and then right now what I'm working on is digitally articulating the blue whale skeleton. So I'm working on reassembling that in a virtual environment.
That's very, very cool. What got you first interested in like 3D scanning and stuff like that?
I started as a research project when I was an undergraduate here at Idaho State University. I was told that if you want to pursue a career in paleontology, the more research you do, the better. So I was advised to do an undergraduate research project. So I picked a really bizarre shark that you guys have in Utah too, called Helicoprion, as my research animal. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot known about the animal other than they have their spirals of teeth. So my start in 3D was CT scanning Helicoprion fossils to see if we could find jaw material inside them, and we did. And then from there, it grew and grew. That was my intro into the 3D lab, though, that I worked. So I was in that lab. They taught me how to process the CT data, and then eventually I got an internship there, and then over time became the manager.
That's excellent. I know that we have some questions about how kids can get involved, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to click the ask a question button. But also go ahead, if you're listening or watching on Facebook, you can also leave us a comment and we'll do our best to respond. I know that kids have a lot of interest in 3D modeling and scanning. So where could we have largely an audience of like middle school and high school? Where could they get involved with 3D scanning and modeling?
You can do it right at home. There's, technology's come a long ways. If you have a cell phone now, you can do 3D scanning, right in your own house. So you can download an app. I don't have any specific ones in mind, but if you just search in the App Store for photogrammetry or 3D scanning, something will come up, and basically it'll just take your cell phone. You can take a series of photos of an object, and then it'll convert that into a 3D model for you pretty much in real time.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Technology is amazing.
It is pretty cool. Eventually it's going to put me out of a job, but that's okay.
So I know that there's a lot of not just students, but also teachers tuning in. And I know sometimes that there's resources of 3D printers at libraries and things like that. But if somebody was interested in getting their own 3D printer, like what would you suggest for a teacher who's like maybe looking at something under $100?
Under 100 is pretty tough. For around 200, you can get a pretty decent 3D printer called an Ender 3. That's pretty much the lowest entry point that I would recommend due to safety reasons, right? If you get below that, things can get a little dangerous for electronics. But yeah, you can get an Ender 3. A lot of schools have if you look at companies like MakerBot, they have programs where they donate 3D printers to schools. So if you're a small school and you want a 3D printer, you can email them, and they have education programs. So they'll sponsor you and help you set up a little maker space at your school, so you can get them for free or reduced cost a lot of the time. I believe the company Flashforge also does that. We have a couple of Flashforge 3D printers at the museum, and they're really good. They're geared towards kids. In fact, the slicing software is really made for kids. It's really easy to use, and the printers themselves are really robust and they're hard to break. So they're really geared for people who are just learning and getting into it. And they do really good stuff. We've had them running for over 2 years now at the museum, and they still just keep cranking out good prints.
Excellent. Sounds like there's a lot of ways to get involved at home. And also, I imagine if people checked with their local science district offices and things like that with their schools, that they would also maybe have some idea of resources for teachers available. So let's get back to some of the stuff you scan, because I love sharks. I think sharks are super duper cool. And I actually am familiar with I'm familiar with its picture of this shark that has its like wheel of teeth, essentially. Can you say the name one more time for the students? I always say it wrong.
So there's a divide in the scientific community. I call it helicoprion.
Okay.
There are people that call it helicoprion, but I prefer helicoprion.
Okay. Sounds like sometimes scientists disagree on stuff.
Yeah.
That shark is very cool, and it sounds like you were doing a lot of scans of its teeth. Is it hard to scan sharks?
No, they're pretty docile when they've been dead for about 280 million years. They're not too bitey, but the size of them becomes a problem, right? Because I 3D scanned them with my lasers, but the laser technology will only hit the surface. It'll only see what you can see. But what I was looking for was what we couldn't see, which was what was inside the rocks. We had to use CT scanners for that. And that presented some difficulties because the rock is really dense. It's really it's a fine grain rock, and it's really old and hard. So the CT, I lost the word, the radiation that goes through there, often when it hits the surface, it scatters and it creates a lot of noise, and it's hard to get it through the rock. So the machines that are able to penetrate that rock are highly specialized, and they can often only do a small object. And our helicoprion fossils range from basketball size up to 3 feet in diameter. So they're really big. So finding a CT scanner that could penetrate that rock and have a workable area big enough to do it was a bit of a challenge. And then they've been buried in the earth for on average about 280 million years. So the fossils themselves are really compressed, they're crushed, they're broken up. So there were some difficulties in reconstructing it. But the plus side is we found the jaws of the shark inside the rock. So we were able to reconstruct the jaws and finally figure out where that crazy spiral of teeth went in there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about like this purpose of this spiral jaw? Do you happen to have a picture of this cool shark?
I have something better.
Oh, even better. Let's see. A cool shark thing. This is very exciting. Whoa!
So those are helicoprion fossilized teeth.
Oh yeah, that's a lot.
It's just a really cool spiral of teeth that you have here. So we find this all over the planet. To date, there's been about 170 of these fossils found worldwide, and we've got almost 100 of them here in Idaho in our museum in Pocatello. So if you're looking for these sharks, Pocatello is where you want to be for some odd reason, but I'll take it. So yeah, you look at this and it looks really different from what you're used to seeing in your typical shark fossil, because we have this really nice spiral of teeth. So the purpose of this is this animal comes from a line of sharks that for some reason lost its ability to shed its teeth. So if you look at an animal like great whites, their teeth are constantly falling out, they're making new ones, and they're doing their thing. Well, these guys lost that ability a long time ago. So what you see in the fossil record over time is an animal that had a more or less straight and really long lower jaw with a bunch of teeth right in the middle of it. And then over time, that jaw trended into a curve, because this is a really efficient way, if you're going to keep all of your teeth, to keep them all in one space, right? So you got, see if we can get in here, right here in the center is its little baby teeth. So that was what it was born with. And then over time, as it adds more teeth, it's adding new teeth back here at the back. We've got, this would have been the last tooth it made before this animal died here. And then this piece here is just one long continuous tooth root, sort of like a conveyor belt. So yeah, our recent research, we were able to show that going back about 360 million years, you get an animal called Agassizontidae, which is just a terrible name to try and pronounce, but it has a straight lower jaw with teeth right in the center and hardly any curve. And then this guy is the culmination of evolution over almost 100 million years to get this really compact curved design. Because if you're growing your teeth in a straight line, you have to get really big body wise as you're adding more teeth. This allows you to make more teeth while keeping a relatively small body. And it's just an economical way to do it.
That's so interesting. Today, when we were looking at the Dino Lab at our dino design, we were having to take into consideration things like body mass and like how much space that there is available on an animal to begin with. I imagine a special challenge for sharks that our dinosaurs didn't encounter would be like swimming in the water. I imagine it'd be hard to swim if you had like a pole of teeth coming out of your head. I think about some of the like dino design challenges that we met with, like just the regular weight of the animal. It's just so fascinating to see the way adaptations change and how their body structure helps to, like, their structure and their function helps to all come together. Let's see. I think we have some questions about about some more of the like the EST things that you have scanned. Like, what is the rarest thing you would say you've ever scanned?
So that would probably be a tie. So probably the rarest thing would be Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, and I scanned some of his personal fossil collection, which was kind of cool. He was an avid fossil collector and he did all sorts of cool stuff. So in fact, he's got an animal named after him, which is Megalonyx jeffersoni, which is a giant ground sloth. So I got to scan some of his fossil ground sloth claws, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
And then I also scanned Tiktaalik, the entire Tiktaalik collection from Neil Shubin and Ted Dashler before it was repatriated back into the Canadian province where they found it. So that was pretty cool. Those are my two highlights, some of my favorite things.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Tiktaalik? It sounds like a candy bar.
Yeah, so that guy, everybody throws around the word transition fossil, and that's what people look for when they talk about evolution, is an animal that goes from one animal to another. There's got to be a transition in between. So Tiktaalik is pretty much the hallmark animal for transition. It's got fish parts and it's got parts for animals that live on land, and it's one of the earliest that has those traits, that has fishy stuff and land stuff. So it's a fish that has arms and legs, and it was able to support itself with the anatomy it had, it wasn't walking on land, but it could sort of flop its way around and survive on land.
That's very cool. More EST type questions. What is your favorite? Oh, I think we talked about that. You really like the helicoprions. Your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, Helicoprion's one of my favorites. I carry it with me everywhere.
And you told us the biggest thing. And let's see. Here's a good question. What material are these 3D fossils printed out of?
More often than not, we're using a material called PLA, which is polylactic acid. It's a corn byproduct. It's a eco-friendly plastic. It'll eventually biodegrade if you leave it out in sunlight and get it hot enough. Yeah, that's what we do the most of our printing in. It's inexpensive and it's relatively good for the environment to make, and it doesn't produce any harsh chemicals or anything like that.
I know that there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? When a lot of students get a chance to meet fossils up close, sometimes they are replicas. How can you tell me a little bit about, like, if you have ever made replicas or your role in making a replica?
So that's if you're seeing a replica in a museum, that was more than likely a process called molding and casting, and I have done a bit of that, and that's um, so this is where technology is catching up a bit with our process, right? So if you have a fossil like this and you want to make a replica of it, previously the best way to do that would be to take something like latex or silicone or something like that and pour it all over the fossil and then let that cure. And then when you peel that off, you've got an exact negative of this. And then like this it's a plastic replica. So you can pour plastic into that mold that you just made and you'll come out with this. Then you can paint it and do stuff like that. The danger there though is that you can damage the fossil. So that's where 3D scanning comes in, because then you can 3D scan it and 3D print it and you never really have to touch the thing. But yeah, I mean, molding and casting is still a very viable and important thing, because it gives you an exact copy. If you're 3D printing something, even using really high resolution resin printers, you're going to end up with layer lines and things that you can see, where you won't get that with molding and casting.
That's fascinating. We have a question from a student. Mike from Midvale asks, are there any of the scans you made available online for others to print?
Absolutely. So the bulk of what we've done is available online right now for download. So we have a couple of different places where we put that. Probably the easiest and where it's curated the best, we have a website called the Idaho Virtual Museum. So if you Google that, it'll pop up, and it's a 3D library that's broken down by fossils and modern mammals and plants and artifacts and things like that. But if you also go to Sketchfab and just search for IVL, our catalog will pop up there. That can be downloaded and 3D printed. And then we're also working right now to move all of our 3D data to a central location called Morphosource. And that one you need to sign up. You have to put in an email and a password, but it's still free to access. And Morphosource is a great resource for people in general, because that's where all of the scientists that are doing 3D work, that's where we're all putting our data now, in that one central hub. And it's always free. You're not charged for any of the models to download and whatnot. Some of them you have to request just so the people can track it for their records. But yeah, you can go there, you can download it, and most of it should be in 3D printable format directly from the website.
Cool. I think that there's some people looking for some like extra resources to get started, because I imagine I've 3D printed some things and it felt very intimidating at first, but I was able to find some good resources. Do you have any ideas for classes that kids could take for 3D modeling or anything like that?
Whew. So I would say check, you mentioned libraries earlier, check local libraries, check local museums. I know in normal summers, right, when we're not all at home, our museum has summer courses where, it comes in and I teach people how to do 3D modeling, and we teach them how to do some CAD design and stuff like that for 3D printing, and we teach a 3D printing class. And in fact, last year we built an entire room dedicated to just educating students on how to run 3D printers and whatnot. So we got computers set up in there and 3D printers and everything. In times like these, though, YouTube is an exceptional resource. There's all sorts of videos there for how to get started in 3D modeling, specifically CAD and things like that. And then there's some people, throw out some names here. So if you're looking to get into 3D printing and you want to learn how the 3D printers work, there's a YouTuber by the name of Maker's Muse, who does really great tutorials on what he even has them for kids, right? What 3D printers are best for kids within certain budgets, how to set those up, how to slice the models, how to get the things into the printer, how to do the printing, how to do post-processing. He's just an exceptional resource of information, and he's an Australian guy, so he's pretty fun to watch. He's good and family friendly.
Cool. Let's see. We have a few more questions coming in. Have you scanned any other shark fossils?
I've done quite a few. Megalodon teeth are always common, so we've scanned those as well. And then, so myself and my research partner, Leaf Tapinella, who's my boss and director of the museum I work for, we also research other sharks. We've done Edestis, which I don't have any on hand here to show, which is related to Helicoprion, but instead of a spiral of teeth, it has a pair of scissors for teeth. So it has a blade in its upper and lower jaw. We've done a lot of 3D scanning of some really bizarre sharks that are pretty uncommon. So Parahelicoprion, which is like Helicoprion, except it's really massive and his teeth are, 9-10 inches long.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there.
Prehistoric sharks are absolutely wild. It is so
they're the best.
All the different like adaptations, all the different things that nature tried to see like what would work. Let's see, we have about 5 minutes left. And so if anybody has any further questions that they would want to ask, please feel free to press the ask a question button underneath the video or submit a question on Facebook. We would love to hear from you. Let's see. Ooh, a great question. What was your most difficult 3D printing project?
Ooh. Let's see. So I just 3D printed a giant spider, and that one was really difficult because it's huge and it's got 8 legs and it requires a lot of fitting of pieces and whatnot. By the time we got it done, it was 12 feet wide from one side of the legs to the other. It was a giant wolf spider. That's probably the most challenging to date.
Wow. I imagine there's lots of little pieces and parts involved with that.
Yeah, so I had to 3D. Let me see if I can pull up the. Let's see. So you might be able to see it there. So.
Oh wow! Spider warning! Spider warning! Okay.
There's a spider there. Yeah, there was a lot of pieces, and it's fully 3D printed. So I 3D printed the eyes separately and painted those and installed them. The fangs were 3D printed separately, so they'd be higher resolution. All of the legs, and it's anatomically accurate all the way down to you can see its little spider toes on the end of its things.
Spiders have the cutest toes.
They have little puppy toes. They're adorable.
It's a very specific zoology kind of thing, but I think spiders are very, very cute. Riley from Philadelphia asks if you've scanned any dinosaurs. I know we talked a little bit about Allosaurus at the beginning, but can you tell us about some other dinosaurs you've scanned?
Yeah, so luckily I'm good friends with the people at your museum, and you guys have dinosaurs. We don't have dinosaurs in Idaho. We have one small little dinosaur, but you guys have a lot of dinosaurs. So every time I'm down there, I always bug Carrie, who's the collections manager there, to, hey, can I scan this? Can I scan that? So I've scanned quite a few dinosaurs. I scanned the new ankylosaur that was recently named. What was that, a year ago now? About?
I believe so.
Yeah, you guys have a really amazing new ankylosaur. So I scanned that.
I've seen it. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but
I can't either. Me and Latin this early in the morning. But yeah, so I've scanned that. I scanned the Cosmoceratops skull, the Diabloceratops skull, the Nasutoceratops skull, Lythronax. I've scanned that skull. I'm trying to get.
For those of you who don't know, the Cosmoceratops, Diabloceratops, and what was the other ceratops you mentioned?
Nasutoceratops.
Nasutoceratops are all part of the Natural History Museum's collection of ceratopsians, which we have, I think, one of the largest collections in the entire world.
Yeah, you guys are pretty good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wall of ceratopsians, and they're all so different. Much like how prehistoric sharks had all the different adaptations, the ceratopsians have all their different styles of horns. It's wonderful. And you mentioned also the Lythronax, which is another meat-eating type of dinosaur, Tyrannosaurid, I believe. Anything else?
I think that's it. The Allosaurus. We scanned a lot of Allosaurus. And then on my bucket list is getting back down there and scanning the Stegosaurus that you guys have in your collection. You have a very largely complete Stegosaurus that is one of my bucket list items to scan.
That's very cool. We, in our Dino Lab today, Andy, who is one of our paleontologists and educator friends was building a dinosaur, and he was very insistent that the large spikes at the end of the tail, the Thagomizer, be on this dinosaur. Not always to total success. I think the stegosaurs are very cool. And Allosaur, if people aren't familiar, is our state, I believe it's our state fossil in Utah, because we found, especially because we found so many of them at the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. Well, friends, we are about out of time. Jesse, I want to say thank you so much for your time for our interview today. It was so nice to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're welcome. We love hearing from you. Scientists and friends, the rest of this week, we're going to be doing classes at 9:30 Mountain Daylight Time for our exploration of the mysteries of Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. And tomorrow we are going to be doing the actual first class. We kind of started at the end with our Dino Lab, and we're going to go into our first introduction tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. That'll be at Mountain Daylight Time with Andy. We also have our certificate completions, and we would love to hear from you from feedback. It helps us provide better distance learning, and we would really love to hear from scientists, teachers, parents, students. If you have something to say that you think could help us make our distance learning programming better, please let us know. Also, on Friday, there's going to be a special interview with record-setting astronaut Scott Kelly. Very exciting. And that's going to also be at 9:30 on Friday at Mountain Daylight Time. Thank you again, Jesse, so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, friends. We'll see you all later. Bye, everybody.